Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I met some of you yesterday, and I'm so excited that you could all be here to just learn a little bit about the emotional health that oftentimes we begin to struggle with as we adjust to these new dynamics of our life that we're experiencing. And a little disclaimer that I am not actually a doctor. I have my master's in counseling, and I'm licensed by the state of Texas. So the purpose of my talk today is to go over the emotional and mental well-being support and learning how to support yourself through these trying times and these major changes where something that you're used to having, your vision, the major change of being able to see at varying levels and the struggles that can come alongside that. So what we want to look at is the emotional impact for those of you who have any kind of eye diagnosis, glaucoma or otherwise, is that there's a lot of uncertainty, right? There's the diagnosis that comes that brings a lot of unknown towards what the next steps in life is going to look like. There's a lot of change that may or may not happen at varying levels. And so there's uncertainty for what my next steps are going to look like, where I'm going to go after this, what are my options for regaining vision, independence. And so there comes with a lot of emotional responses as you begin to learn these new things about yourself. And so common reactions are going to be, that fear, some sadness, anxiety, frustration, because when we look at the loss of our vision, oftentimes we're very aware of that. But what we don't always realize immediately is that losses go beyond that vision. There's loss of identity, loss of autonomy, right? There's loss of independence, loss of relationships, loss of vision, loss of what could have been. Oftentimes we go throughout this process and we have an idea for what our life is going to look like, and now this drastically changes. Something I had expected to occur now has to shift, now has to change, and requires adjustment that's oftentimes very emotionally difficult, as well as the physical changes you're also experiencing. And so what we go into is how to manage those aspects of our life, how to work through those different dynamics that we're experiencing. And so the question is, well, what does grieving well look like? Because that's what loss often entails, is grief. We don't often think of it that way. Oftentimes we associate grief with the loss of life, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend. But loss is much broader. Grieving is much broader than just the loss of life. One of the common things that comes up with grief is that we hear about the 5 stages of grief. It's usually one of the first things that's going to pop up if we type into Google grieving, right? Those 5 stages are going to be denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And the misconception with that is oftentimes we think that's going to be a linear process, right? I'm going to start in denial, I'm going to go to anger, and then I'm going to go to bargaining, and eventually I'll work my way up to acceptance. And that's not the reality of what we experience. Grief is unique to the individual. Even though everyone in this room, or most of you in this room, are experiencing some form of vision loss, we all handle it differently. We all take our previous life experiences and we interpret what we are currently going through that lens. And so when we're going through the lens of our own experiences, working through that process, sometimes we will start in denial. Right? Doctor says you have glaucoma, and it takes a while to come to terms with that. It takes, okay, well, now I have to do these drops. Now I have to look into this surgery. And sometimes it takes time to process through that experience. And so sometimes we go into denial. Sometimes we go straight to bargaining. Sometimes we start with acceptance, and then we move back to bargaining, and then we move over to depression. We can bounce back and forth between each one of those. And what I would say throughout that process is allowing yourself to feel the emotions that come up within you without judgment. Oftentimes we attach labels of, oh, I should feel this way. Oh, I should be over it by this point. I should have been further along than I am. And we attach all these judgments towards what I'm experiencing, where I'm supposed to be. And the reality is that hinders us. It actually creates a resistance to being able to emotionally process. Because I'm not allowing myself to feel. I'm telling myself I don't need to be where I'm at. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's the idea of acceptance, almost a radical acceptance of my emotion. Not a positive thing, not a negative thing. Not, oh, I should feel this way, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. It's being able to acknowledge the reality of how I'm being affected. I didn't say I liked it. I didn't say it was enjoyable, but it is what I'm experiencing. It is what I'm going through. And so allowing yourself to feel, giving yourself the self-compassion and freedom to experience those emotions. And so we're going to talk about your grief with friends, with family, with others who are going through the same thing, leaning into support. Strategies for walking through that, using journaling, sometimes going to therapy, having support from others. And what I'd like to focus on for this next part is what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and kind of go into some of the basics for what that looks like. Because while it is important to let ourselves feel, to process those emotions, we also want to look at what comes next in those steps. And so what we're looking at is to change how I'm viewing my current situation, how that's affected. And oftentimes one of the most common factors there is your controllables versus your uncontrollables, right? What can I change? And what can I not? What do I need to let go of? Right? Sometimes we can't change the diagnosis that we've been given, what we're experiencing. What I can change is how I react to it. Right? I can't change how other people are going to respond to the new changes in my life. What I can change is whether I seek support or whether I stay in isolation. Right? I can't change the past decisions that might have affected me. What I can change is my self-care habits and what I can do moving forward. I can't change whether people are going to judge me, but I can change how I adapt to my environment. And so an example of this is going to be reframing our thoughts. Right? And so sometimes we have these unhelpful thoughts. We have this thought that pops into our head, and it tends to gravitate and pull us in that direction. And so an example of that is sometimes it's, I'm useless now that I can't drive. We're very upset with the loss of independence we have, and so we attach a statement about who we are, such as, I'm useless. But if we reframe that thought, what we can recognize another way to think about that new reality is that driving was one part of my life. And now I'm learning new ways to stay mobile. I'm learning new ways to stay independent. Is it the same as what I could do prior? No. But oftentimes we can't change those realities. Focusing on what I can control and reframing how I think about those things. And so as we go through that, we want to look, right? Healthy emotional processing. We talk about the acceptance of feelings. We also talk about the validation of them. It's okay to feel what you feel. Is it enjoyable? Oftentimes, no. No one has to convince me to be happy. If that's how I'm feeling, sign me up. That's a great day for me. But when I'm angry, when I'm frustrated, when I'm afraid, oftentimes those are uncomfortable emotions. They're not emotions that I want to sit with, but they're also normal reactions to what I experience in my life. Sometimes they have a place, even as undesirable as it is to feel those things. And so validating, I am allowed to feel the things that I do. Right? And so we look at how to express feelings in healthy ways. Right? Whether that's talking about it with peers, journaling, seeking out help, finding ways to express our emotions in ways that are also productive to our well-being. And so a few of the strategies that we go into for emotional regulation is some mindfulness and grounding techniques. I'm not going to have time to go into all these today, but one of those big ones is deep breathing. Taking time to focus on my breath, taking big breaths in and exhaling slowly. Right? When stress comes on, when I start to get those cortisol releases from the stress that builds up in my life, oftentimes I find people do one of two things. And there's more things that people do, but these are what I find to be the two common ones, and that's that either I start to take short, quick breaths, not necessarily a hyperventilating, but I'm not taking the full range and capacity my lungs can handle. And so my breath starts to slow down, or it starts to speed up, rather, because my body's not getting enough oxygen. And so to compensate, my heart rate speeds up, my body system starts to speed up. Now my mind feels like it's racing, and my emotions are elevating even further. By slowing down our breath, we start to slow down our response. Sometimes in stressful situations, it's helpful to have something like guided imagery. Being able to think through a safe place or a favorite spot in your life, a time where we were relaxed. Can I close my eyes and envision myself in that place? Almost choosing where our thoughts go and inducing somewhat of a calmer environment. Another one is engaging with my senses, right? The more I can focus on my current reality, the less I'm thinking about what's happened in the past and what might have happened in the future, or what might occur. Grounding yourself to the current moment, letting go of the thoughts that are racing in our minds sometimes, right? How does the chair feel underneath me? How would I describe that sensation? What does it feel like if I rub my fingers together? Focus on the changes that makes and what you notice about it. It draws our mind to the current reality we're experiencing. Same thing with what can I hear? Sometimes, what can I still see around me? Sometimes with the changes that come with vision, that becomes more difficult. And so another one I recommend is sometimes I close my eyes. Even when I close my eyes, what I start to notice is that there's a reddish tint as light filters through my eyelids. Depending on where I turn my head, I notice different shadows, different contexts for where I'm looking. It engages with your perception of your current reality. Another one there is progressive muscle relaxation. It's a process of tightening your muscles and starting to release them. I usually go head to toes, and I start through each individual muscle group in my body. Oftentimes, emotionally, we store that tension in our body. And so if there's a flexion range of 0 to 100%, oftentimes when we get really tense, we don't even recognize it, but I'm tightening my muscles to about 30%. This is an exercise in tightening those muscles all the way and then focusing on relaxing through that 30% down to 0. Tightening up the shoulders and letting that fall. Squeezing the arms together and then focusing on relaxing that body the whole way through. Relaxing the physical response oftentimes elicits that emotional calmness. Another area is going to be building your support network. Unfortunately, when new things pop up into our life, the sad reality of that is some people don't stick around, but some people do. Knowing who I can turn to for support, right? Who's on your team? What friends can I reach out to, right? What family can help me with my current reality? Maybe we do need to see a counselor, talking with your low vision specialists. The importance of asking for help cannot be understated. We could all use help in our lives, and it's not something, especially as we deal with the loss of independence, that we might feel naturally drawn towards reaching out to. Engaging with those around us for our own well-being so that we can care for ourselves emotionally as we deal with the loss of our physical eyesight. Moments like today, where you have opportunities to talk amongst each other, to talk with other specialists, networking together to come together in community, other people who might understand what it is you're going through, finding events to engage with. And so if I had to go through some of the key takeaways today, is that grief and emotional pain are going to be natural responses. It's uncomfortable. We don't want to spend time with it, but oftentimes it's necessary for the mental and emotional healing as well, right? Shifting our focus towards what we can control rather than being stuck on what we can't, right? And that each of us is not alone. Support does exist out there. And so if you're feeling isolated, I encourage you to reach out to others. And maybe you're struggling more than you want people to know. Maybe you're existing in that depressed state of grieving for an extended amount of time, and I encourage you to seek out help, to reach out to a mental health professional or counselor, someone who can help walk you through those moments, right? Because adjustment is going to be a journey. It's not a destination that you finally arrived with. It's something you're going to be experiencing for the rest of your life. That holds true for the people in this room. That holds true for everyone out there in the world. But for now, we're going to, I believe, open over to the Q&A panel. But I thank you for the chance to speak today. And if I had to leave you with a question, it would be to ask yourself, what is one way you can take care of your emotional health this week? Thank you for letting me speak.